Alright, making a video. It looks like it anyway. Okay, it's kind of dark, which is to my advantage. Having a bit of trouble with neuralgia, nerve issues, and with my jaw, my teeth all hurt. But anyway, so it's a nice reminder of just how bad pain can be, and it's nothing to be mocked. So anyway, it's sort of a video to Hothloday, who seems to want to have some sort of philosophical conversation based on premises, and so everybody just builds up their evidence in nice little piles and leads to a conclusion, and everything can be viewed and inspected. And I'm all for that kind of thing, but his definition of what is a real thing is, I would argue, too limited, and doesn't provide any room for a conversation that could matter or be about anything that could matter. So the idea is that you identify what it is that we're attempting to resolve, which is describe reality. And so the reality, we could say, has things in it, and the things have properties. You can identify the difference between one thing and another thing based on its configuration. And that includes a property would include where it is, here or over there, or up there. And functions would just be another way of saying, what's it do? What are the consequences of its arrangement, its structure, its form? Now, if you go all the way back to the atoms and then the little bits inside of them, there's no way to detail that. There's no way to have a philosophical conversation starting at the starting point of the most elemental bits in the universe. Just doesn't really provide any philosophical starting point. So anyway, the other thing that happens are the events. The events are the interactions between thing A and thing B and thing C. And that's about all you have. And frankly, events become things. I mean, we're more of an event than we are a thing. Most of the stuff we're doing, being, is event-driven. Heartbeat, blinking eyes, all kinds of events taking place, and the event of processing the world, the energy, the forces, your interaction with your environment. I mean, we're in an oxygen environment, an atmospheric environment, lots of stuff going on that we're breathing, and that we're doing chemically processing, doing lots of things in terms of those interactions. Which is fueling the whole thermodynamic system, and producing the facilitating the processing of the environment in this complex way with these senses. And so I'm just saying, like, I'm all for cutting it down to its core, but if the core is going to be, well, we're not going to acknowledge the existence of consciousness because it's not a quote-unquote thing that we can see. We can't see each one of our conscious moments as a, I can't look at somebody and see the arrangement that's creating their perception. I can know that there's an arrangement that's doing it, that their little neurons are in a certain way, and there's a certain amount of chemicals between them, and there's a certain amount of electricity moving between them. And that arrangement is creating whatever their perception is. I can know that's the truth, but I can't see it. And so, is the only legitimate conversation about stuff we can see or stuff we have to imagine it. We can't see it. We have to imagine it. We can't process the actual thing. We can only process the idea of the thing, an understanding of the thing. And the rule would be is that understanding has to be correlated to the thing itself, and that you have to test your correlations to make sure you haven't made a mistake. So he uses examples of logic where you do something silly like, say, all men are real, women aren't real, women aren't men, therefore women aren't real, or some kind of stupid chain of reasoning where you know there's a flaw in it right from the beginning, because it's basically like saying, it's like you could have two fingers up and you could say that's two, and that's the only version of two in the universe. Well, that would be a silly assumption. So, saying all men are real is an incomplete statement. Lots of things are real. So, you weren't making an exclusive statement. Only men are real. So that's the clear flaw in that logical chain. And you always have to be careful for that. That's what you have to. That's why being intelligent takes a little bit of work, is because you have to know about the things not to fall into the easy little traps, the silly traps of jumping to a wrong conclusion, having incomplete or insufficient evidence to make a statement. So, for example, I can make statements about the rich are too rich. Now, I can make lots of arguments pointing out how they create too much waste, and they're too high maintenance, and but in the end, I have to account for the fact that there can be arguments where, well, in the long run, they force people to work harder, and therefore it creates more industry and people are more productive. So it's almost like some sort of argument you could make for slavery. Like, it's okay to torture some people or brutalize them because the amount of comfort you gain in getting to the future faster is somehow worth it. But yeah, you have to account for all those statements that can be made. So maybe it's not a complete enough statement. You have to sort of include the evidence with the statement sometimes, or the statement doesn't mean much. It's just your opinion. It's just your statement. It may seem obviously true, but you have to demonstrate that you've made it completely true, okay, by accounting for the counter arguments and the counter arguments. The other facts that may hinge on that fact. It's like all kinds of things. You can care about the welfare of animals, and you could say, well, it's okay if they kill fish, in the ocean, because those fish will breed if you don't kill them. And so if you kill them, they won't breed, and that means there'll be less fish, which is good. Then there's less suffering in fish. That kind of logic. So you always have to be kind of careful in making blanket statements about anything. So anyway, I intend this video to be short, and it never comes out that way. Just because, what premises does Hofstadter want to begin with? Just to say, okay, I believe in logic, and I believe there's a material reality that's creating our reality. I could agree with that. But to say that no system can be acknowledged as doing anything, that none of the functions, okay, the things that are just the byproduct of the arrangement of our goo, have any reality, when the arrangements clearly do have a reality. They have consequences. We function because our liver is our liver and our brain is our brain, because they have distinctly different functions. And I would argue that clearly the event of us being conscious is just as real as our liver being a liver, doing livering, cleaning whatever it cleans, absorbing whatever it absorbs, and producing whatever, cholesterol and some other crap. But anyway, so it's still going to come down to what's important or significant or outstanding, completely different, unique, notable, value relevant, value demands attention. What sticks out when we look at reality? And my argument is that to me, it's just obvious what sticks out the most, in the sense of this capacity to feel is huge, monstrous, gigantic thing. It's so different than anything else in the universe. Big event. And having an organism, so intimately tied to its whole evolution as a thinking machine, is tied to the agenda set by that feeling element. It essentially is the reward and punishment mechanism that makes all success and failure possible. It makes it possible for us to have advanced our science to the point where you can pretty reliably fly in an airplane, because it works. Reward and punishment works. So there's no. I mean, what's the point of having some regime for conversation when the conversation is going to start with some notion that somehow there's no emergent function, there's no emergent properties, there's just physical properties, and you can't. Again, I'm just saying, I'm conscious, I'm experiencing it. Clearly, almost doesn't matter whether it's physical or not physical. It exists, and it'd be silly for me to say no. It doesn't. It doesn't do what I'm sensing it does, when clearly it's doing something. It's clearly a function, and the function has written all over it this capacity to create circumstances that are innately unpleasant, nasty, revolting, avoidable, and that's just a fact. And so, if that's not going to be a fact that we're going to include in the conversation, because you've decided it can't be a real thing, then there's nothing to talk about. There really isn't. Everything hinges on what you've decided is significant or valuable, meaningful. And I can't see how anything else could possibly be meaningful outside of the welfare of a feeling thing, as stated. How can anything mean anything? How could anything have value if it doesn't affect something valuable, which is the welfare of a feeling organism's state of mind? That's where all the value is. So how do you have a conversation then? It's impossible. So if I concede there is no meaning, there is no difference between feeling like shit and feeling great, then there's nothing to talk about, because, well, if it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, right? If you torture people, you don't torture them, it doesn't matter. Then yeah, there's nothing to talk about, because there's no such thing as success and failure, because there's no such thing as money on the table. Who cares who wins the poker hand if there's no money, nothing's in the game. There's no stakes, no stakes, no conversation. It's all moot and irrelevant. So I just don't see the point of it. There'd be no point in accepting your axioms, because they can go nowhere in terms of a meaningful conversation, because there's nothing to meaningfully talk about. But clearly, if you accept my axiom that the negative quality of the sensation is a real negative, it's intrinsic and fundamental to the experience. The experience says negative. It's made of negative. It's a negative thing. It's never can be. You can't put a hat on it and clown face and make it a happy thing. It's intrinsically negative. It can't be turned into anything else. Having surgery without anesthesia or something, whatever. You can't make it into a good thing. It's just impossible to do that. So so then you can have a conversation, but your axioms don't go anywhere. So that's just saying. I don't know how you have an expectation that you're going to have a conversation with anybody but a nihilist based on your premises. And what would the conversation be about is a bunch of irrelevant crap that can't mean anything. Because there's no such thing as a good or bad outcome. Can't be. Just can't be. So anyway, yeah, that's enough, I think. So until the next time and such.